Welcome aboard, folks. We'll get cooking in a minute. We're going to be talking about GSS, Gold Standard Science. Right? Gold Standard Science. All right. Welcome, everybody. We'll get cooking in a minute. Let everybody get here. But we're going to be talking about that Gold Standard Science for EPA and USDA. Almost everybody here is either with USDA, FDA, or EPA. So welcome, everybody. We will get cooking. Do me a favor, if you would. Change your chat from just host and panelists to everyone so we can just create a free-for-all here. If that's all right with you. You can always text us directly if you want to, right, Daniel?
Yep, absolutely.
But we love to have the back and forth. If that's okay with you, you can change it to everyone. And let me grab the session docs for everybody so that you guys can grab those as well. In just a minute, we'll get everybody going. Well, welcome, folks. I know it right at the top of the hour. We'll give everybody a minute or two to get here. All right, so question. This is the question for the day. You guys ready? Favorite summer vacation place? Jimmy, you first. What's yours?
Nags Head, North Carolina.
Nags Head. Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, I was going to say somewhere in the Outer Banks as well. So
somewhere in the Outer Banks. I was just in Hilton Head last week.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's a little bit of a drive from here, but when I can make it down there, it's beautiful.
So how about you folks? Anybody want to plug in? What's your favorite summer vacation place? Well, we're waiting for one more minute. You got 1 minute. Pop it in the chat and let us know so we have... we just did Hilton Head. That's a great place. I don't know if that's my favorite, probably close to it in the United States anyway. Glacier National Park. Ron, great place. One of my favorite memories was at Glacier. We hiked out to the lakes and stayed at the hotel, the big hotel, Glacier. Great place. Evangelina, Los Angeles. All right, fantastic. So we have LA, we have Glacier. Anybody else want to plug in? You got about 30 seconds. You can plug in what's your favorite place in the middle of the woods and wilderness, not a beach person. World's End National Park, Niagara. Niagara's a great place, David. Great, awesome. Puerto Rico, Flamenco Beach. Love it. All right, and that's Xavier, the coolest name here. Sorry for everybody else. Xavier's got the coolest name. All right, we'll get cooking. If you want to let us know where you're coming in from, we always love to know where you're coming in from. We just want to welcome everybody to meeting GSS requirements for data collection, compilation, communication, and reporting for projects and studies. Longest title we've ever had. Daniel, just saying.
Take the crown on that one.
That's right. This is pretty much for EPA and FDA folks, as well as USDA folks. We have a special guest, Jimmy Beertis from IR4. He is joining us today, but we want to welcome everybody. I'm going to introduce Jimmy in just a minute. He's the study director for the IR4 project. Daniel is the head of software development for iAdvantage Software, and I am your humble GovBrief host. I'm Dave Lowe. Just so everybody knows, this session includes GSA vendor product information, which is iAdvantage Software and eStudy. We'll be talking about that today. That's why Daniel's here. And we are not affiliated or endorsed by GSA or any other agency. This was actually given to us by GSA back in 2012. Jimmy, you believe that? 2012?
I can't believe it.
I'm telling you, it's crazy. But it's for you, for informational purposes only, and it provides you the ability to engage with us without the indication or endorsement or commitment to purchase from any vendor. And this is being recorded, so you can submit it to, what do they call that? Those awards in LA. That's what we do. So I appreciate it. And David's from Philadelphia, if you want to let us know where you're coming in from. We got some introductions for everybody. I'll introduce Jimmy as well as iAdvantage, and we'll be talking about the gold standard science and the directives. And we have some of the handouts for you in just a minute. I will provide those to you. And hang on a second. Frank, you need something? You're just saying hi. You want to unmute for a second? Get your hand up. Just want to make sure you're good. I'll put your hand down, but you can unmute at any time since I gave you permission. All right. So we'll talk about some current agency challenges. Data collection is always a big deal, right, Daniel? And solidifying that data so it is absolutely good data, right? That's one of the hardest things to be able to have. If you don't do it right in the beginning, what happens?
The output's going to be bad.
Yeah, bad, ugly in, ugly out, right?
That's right.
So we'll talk about that. And we're going to have some case studies here using the IR for EPA and USDA safety, as well as other case studies that Jimmy can walk us through. Throughout this process, we don't have a ton of folks here, so if you have a question, you have anything you want to throw in, let us know, and we'll get into procurement and funding options if you're interested in that, as well as closing remarks. Throughout this process, we will be lighting up some polls. So my first question is, how familiar are you with the term gold standard science as outlined in the recent White House executive order? Maybe you're somewhat familiar. Maybe you have no idea. Maybe you're very familiar. Maybe you have some ideas, and maybe you don't know exactly what the details are, or maybe this is the first time you're hearing about it. And if you have any comments throughout this, please feel free to pop them in. I'll do my best to be able to include you in the conversation as we do it. In fact, inclusion in the conversation, as you came in, if you want to pop in the chat, you can do this as well. This would be the best briefing ever. So Iantha said it gave criteria for data governance. That's exactly what we're talking about, right, Daniel?
Absolutely.
Right. Jessica says, Jessica says, give examples. We're going to do our best to do that, right? Vincent, if it inspires an excellent idea concept on how the PADME, P-A-D-M-E, somebody can tell me what that means, team can help to corral FDA data in accordance with agency goals. And that's from Vincent. From HFP, so he's a program analyst. So, Vincent, if you have some additional information you want to throw in on that, would make that great. Slides were provided after the briefing. That was Chloe. Absolutely, Chloe will do that. And Katerzana, presentation includes live real-world examples of how it was measurably reduced data errors and collection costs. That's exactly what we're here for. Isn't it, Jen?
Yep. Absolutely.
Yep. And this is Lindsay. If you learn something new, anything new for Lindsay, that'll help. Let's see. Recording and slides after we got that. Virginia demonstrates the iAdvantage platform is quickly accessible and very user-friendly. I'm hoping that's the case. Right, Jimmy?
I hope so, too.
Yeah, that's what we found.
Yep. Elena says concise. We're going to do our best, Elena. Jennifer, it was short and sweet. So Elena and Jennifer, we're going to make them happy if it's short and sweet and concise. How about that? And Christina saying data collection, data sharing, data burden requirements. That's all part of the system, right?
Yep.
All right. So if you have anything else you would like us to do, this will be the best briefing ever. If you can put that in the chat, or please address. Those are the two questions we asked coming in. So I want to get these to you guys as well. Make sure we address these. Hang on one second. Data system owner considerations. That comes from Christina. Data documented quality and metadata standards. I like that one. I think we'll talk about that, right, Daniel?
Yep.
And Katerzana said, explain how this e-study iAdvantage platform helps federal agencies meet scientific integrity standards. Very important, the integrity of data, right? That's what it's all about.
Absolutely.
Yep. And Virginia says, how using this platform maintains and can improve data integrity. Love it. All those right in our wheelhouse. If you got anything else you want to pop in there, you just let us know. If you have any questions, please raise your hand, put it in the Q&A, pop it in the chat. I'll do my best to be able to pay attention to it. If you have something you don't want everybody and their mother to see, send it to info@iadvantagesoftware.com. That's on the bottom of the slides right here. So you can get into that and let us know if you have any of that. We love the feedback. And the first feedback that I have is let's do this real quick. If you click on this top link and it pops open this Can you give me feedback to say that you can get to the session docs, and that will have the executive order that's in there for your reading pleasure. Everybody got access to that top link? Does it go to this place where you see these? Everybody got it? I see one. Anybody that can't get to this? Anybody that can't? Oh, there we go. We got a thumbs up on that. So what I want everybody to do is you can go right up here. Fantastic. You can go right up here to this download button and grab it all, and it'll put it right in your downloads. And then you don't have to worry about individuals, but you can gain access to this. And if we find any additional data from our conversation today, we're going to drop it into this box, and you'll have access to this for as long as you need to. Sound good, everybody? So everybody can get to that. That includes the presentations in there, so you don't have to worry about that after the fact. We will send out a recap email with all that, but you can gain access to all those pieces. So Daniel, tell us a little bit about iAdvantage and what got you guys started back in 2003.
Yeah, absolutely. So like you said, we're a software company that was founded in 2003. We were founded by our sister company, which was a team of scientists that needed an in-house solution to manage large amounts of data, to support registrations for EPA, USDA at the time. And it was a fairly new thing, and there was lots of data. Everything was on paper. So we formulated a solution in-house. We're headquartered here in Cary, North Carolina. We have collectively over 30 years of data capture, management, and reporting. Like I said previously, most of the data that our platform has collected has been in support of EPA, USDA reporting requirements. We are a small business as well as a GSA schedule holder. Love that.
And we'll talk a little bit about that as we get to the end. I'm going to pop open these and share the results for everybody. So 43% are somewhat familiar. 35% have heard the term but don't know the details. Fantastic. That's why we do these briefings. And 22%, this is the first time hearing about it. Let's see if there's anything else that I need to address while we're doing this. Let's see. I think that's it. Very good. There's no comments there. I thought there might have been. All right, so our next poll, real quick, as we get into this, we're asking all kind of great questions. Let me do this. When you think of GSS, which principles comes to your mind first? Since a lot of folks don't even know what it is, there's some new principles right there for you that you'll figure that out. But if you don't know what it is, that's fine. We love that too. So as folks are answering this, let's talk about some of what is posted or was put in the executive order of what is gold standard science, GSS for short. 1, reproducible. 2, transparent, communicative of error and uncertainty, right? So we do know when you're doing data collection, right, Daniel, there will be errors and uncertainty based on whatever the study is, right?
Yeah. I mean, one of the things we found with this one too is, especially if you're doing data collection that's not in-house and you're getting contractors or outside personnel involved, a lot of times, there's a level of uncertainty or, maybe they're not really confident in what data they're putting in. So having a way to mark that and still being able to collect that is very important as well as the good data. But, it's not always good, and there's things that come up, so you want to be able to track those things.
Are you saying that scientists sometimes get wordy?
Potentially at times.
All right.
So everybody thinks differently, right?
That's right. Hey, man, that's what we want, right? We want different perspectives.
Exactly.
So collaborative and interdisciplinary, skeptical of its findings and assumptions, that's part of the scientific process, right? To prove the hypothesis kind of thing. Structured for how do you say that word? Falsifiability or hypothesis, right? Subject to unbiased peer review and accepting of negative results or as positive incomes and without conflicts of interest. So all of this is what's embodied in the executive order. You guys can read that on your own. But these are primarily what the gold standard science is. We had people asking that as they were registering to say, hey, what is this? And what are we talking about? So today we're going to divide this into some key areas to talk about what I think is really important for meeting one of the biggest issues overall is that a lot of times we have duplicative efforts, right, Daniel?
Yeah,
So-
absolutely. Yeah, there's nothing worse as a clear-cut example. I'm sure we've all been, to a doctor's office, a dentist appointment, things like that, where they still hand you a paper form and you got to write down your name, all this information that that they already have in a system somewhere. It's frustrating at times. So, you know, seeing that in parallel and in the modern world where everything is already collected, you want to be able to carry things over and not have things collected, in a duplicative manner. So it is a very important.
Absolutely is. So if we go through these bullet points, so reproducibility, so being able to tell us about how you view this from the e-study perspective.
Yeah, so from the eStudy platform perspective, you want to make sure that in a data collection that you run, that you want to be able to reproduce it to a T later on to prove that the data is sound. So being able to create your data collection in templates and be able to just re-implement those later, save yourself time, make sure that everything is the same, is going to be invaluable.
And then transparency, obviously, that's a big deal in this administration to put out the ability for audit trails and such, right?
Yeah. Having something built in the platform that maybe not your data collectors, but the people that are going to look at the data after the fact, the people that are going to be questioning, all of the data, that you want to be sure that they're able to see, electronic records that are signed. They want to be able to see the audit trail. They want to be able to go back in time and see, what the breadcrumb trail was. And then also being able to just export the whole data set and just see the raw data is very important, especially for those QA folks.
Yeah, I agree. And what do you mean by error and uncertainty? What is that?
So sometimes the best approach that you can take for uncertainty or errors is making sure that your data collection is designed in a way that sometimes puts up guide rails. So things like inline validations, or even if you want to leave it more open, being able to track deviations and report on those and find those after the fact. As well as, sometimes you just have to capture the negative results. Sometimes, you're collecting data and you're wanting to prove a point, but you get the opposite of that. So having a way to be able to have the end user still collect negative results and then run a report later and be able to, see those outliers, so that you can either, try to recreate it or figure out what has caused the negative results. And
then peer review.
Peer review is, I'm sure anyone in the scientific community is aware of the process, but having a platform that allows you to have workflows that support this process is very important.
And then the big I word, integrity. That's what it's all about.
Integrity. Right? Yeah. So this is probably the biggest one, and this is kind of where all of these pieces come together. Being able to bring all of this together, and being able to show the metadata behind the data. So QA folks are starting to get really smart when it comes to this. They want to see not only just the data itself, but they want to see the entire history of the data. And this is really big when you get into things like data provenance, being able to see the whole picture, being able to paint a picture about the data. So having a platform that wraps all this into a nice package is really helpful. Saves you a lot of time.
Agreed. And guess what? Everybody agrees. Look at that. 71%, not everybody, but most everybody agrees that the top drawer thing is in data integrity. I think that's what, if everybody knowing that fixing the data after the fact, if you don't get it in right, is one of the biggest problems that folks have. All right. So our next poll is, what tools or systems does your organization primarily use for scientific data capture and reporting? So let us know. Is it paper-based? And we know what the number one's going to be because we've done these before, right, Daniel?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the easiest one.
We know.
Easily accessible, yeah.
We know which one is going to win. But with that, we're gonna pull up Jimmy's slides. 1 second there, Jimmy. I'm going to have you all rocking and rolling in 1 minute.
Great, thank you.
You bet. 1 second while they're filling those out, and we will Let me make sure that you can see this. Does that look right?
It is correct.
All right, fantastic. For those of you who just joined, I popped in the session docs. That top link will get you to the presentation, all the handouts that deal with the executive order, as well as the supporting data from USDA and advice from there as well as the presenter information for you. And Ron Thomas says, Daniel, I heard Cary. Apparently, you're in Cary. So I wondered if you use SAS as a front end or report generator.
Good question. We're very familiar with SAS. We've had lots of meetings with them. They're 15, 20 minutes down the road from us. We don't actually use them in our product. We have our own report generator in our product. And our philosophy is we also have an API that you can get the data out of our system. So if you want to use, the big tools like Tableau, SAS, those more bigger analysis tools, we allow connections via API to those systems to do further data analysis. But great question.
That is a great question. Thanks, Ron. And so we're going to get to the case study here with Jimmy Beertis. So Jimmy is a study director with the IR4 project, and the IR4 project's down there in North Carolina, not too far from you guys, right, Daniel?
Not at all, just down the road.
So what is the IR4 project, and how does it tie in with FDA, USDA, and EPA?
Sure.
What does that mean, Jimmy? Now,
Sure.
Tell us about you first. Tell us about you.
So, my name is Jimmy Beertis, and I am a study director with the IR4 project. I have been with the IR4 project since about 2020. IR4 project used to be based at Rutgers University, and in 2020 they moved to Raleigh to NC State University. And so what we do is we try to basically get crop protection chemicals labeled, because the label is the law. And so what we are asked to do, and this started in 1960s, and we are a go-between because the big chemical companies don't have the bandwidth necessarily or the resources to work on specialty crops. And so we work on specialty crops, which is defined as anything that's grown on less than 200,000 acres within the U.S. It's probably about 75% of the fruits and vegetables and everything else that you eat on your dinner plate on any given evening. And so the way that we kind of work is we are asked to look at certain projects where there may be a pest of concern. And this will generally it can't come from within us, and it cannot come from industry, the crop protection industry. It has to come from, end users, whether it's the Watermelon Association or something like an extension agent or extension agents in certain regions and stuff of that nature. And so what we do is we identify these solutions that may be useful, and we generate data. We go out and spray the chemistries in a certain manner, in a certain way, and stuff of that nature. And then we collect the fruit from these crops and analyze what residues are left behind for any certain chemistries. And then once all that data is compiled, these huge reports are then submitted to the EPA. And so that we can get these chemistries and get these crops on the chemical labels, so that the farmers and growers at the end of the day can use this in their fields to protect their crops from certain pests.
And so all over, right?
Yes. So we actually are all over the United States, including Hawaii and Puerto Rico. You can see that we have 4 different regions in which we are based. And oftentimes we will work with Canada to the extent that we can. If we have very similar or the same projects that use the same use rates and stuff of that nature for a given crop. And a lot of times this may be in greenhouse grown crops, such as tomatoes or lettuce or strawberries. And it can be other crops, like we have one this year for sorghum that's involving Canada as well. And so, the EPA specifies that depending on the crop and where it's predominantly grown, we have to do trials in those regions and in those areas of the country. Awesome. Next slide, please.
I will get you that. I want to share these results with everybody real quick. It's slimming down there, Daniel. It used to be 80%. It was Excel and Access, but so 55%.
Still the winner.
Still the winner. Still the winner. All right. So I do have the next poll real quick and we'll get right back to yours there.
Sure.
And that is, which of these challenges most limit your ability to meet gold standard science expectations? So the expectation is all that integrity of the data and making sure everything's clean and it's all reviewable. So sometimes it's fragmented and outdated tools, lack of staff training. That's always an issue, wouldn't you say, Daniel?
Yeah,
Right?
a lot of the times.
Data integrity and audit traceability. We talked about that earlier. And resource or budget constraints. Everybody's going to probably. You can choose as many as you want, by the way, for these. Or lack of executive mandate. Or maybe you don't have any idea. And let us know if you have anything. So GSS and GLP awareness. So GLP and GSS align very, very well, don't they? Gold standard science versus what? GLP is?
Good laboratory practices.
There it is. All right. So you take us through this back in 2022, where you guys were.
So we use nothing but paper for everything. And so one of the things that we wanted to look at is, can we have the ability to collect data via an electronic system using computers and stuff of that nature, or in some instances, tablets and stuff of that nature. And so where this fit for us is we needed to have regulated software and computer systems, customizable forms, and the ability to collect the data, whether we were online or offline. And then another nice feature is real-time data access. And we were able to, and then also report generation, which we have just started getting into that. We've been collecting and using this data for about 2 years now, and we're starting to get through the process to where we are actually building report generation, and it has saved tremendous amounts of time. And so how this was met by eStudy and eField data books is they have versions of their software that you can use online or offline. They have query functions so that we can see when an application has been made. We know when the applications have been made. We know when the last application of a test substance has been made, and when the sample has to be taken for our studies. We can see all the raw data in a print utility, printed out on paper if we choose to do so, or as a PDF. And also we can have audit trails generated in Excel, and those are often used by our quality assurance unit. And then, like I said before, you can see in real time whether or not an application was done properly or not, because if it wasn't done properly, instead of finding out a year later, we can find out instantaneously.
Have you had that happen? Have you had it happen where you went back and had?
For sure. We've had, I know stories where 18 months to 24 months after the application was made, we found out that it was misapplied and not applied in a manner that was sufficient to be used for the study. This has reduced that significantly because we can pull a report once a week, see who sprayed what when, and then go back and look into the notebooks. And then you can also set levels by which people can see notebooks and stuff, and how much they can see, or if they can have the ability to write. So
I know, Jimmy, at one point you had mentioned because you were on paper, you were shipping, a lot of paper back and forth using FedEx or another carrier,
yes.
But them losing packages. Well, I'm sure we've all been a victim of that at some point, of packages being lost. But with that much shipping in your business, I'm sure there were times where things were lost, right?
Absolutely. We've had entire notebooks and trials lost. We put in practices of scanning when scanning became available. You got to understand that this organization's been around since the mid to late 60s, and we just recently celebrated 60 years of continuously collecting data. And so it's a nice feature that, since it is electronic, we can always access it and we don't have to worry about losing it.
Do you find that real-time access to the data is helpful from like an administrative standpoint?
It's extraordinarily helpful because we can take a look once a week. We can build a query that says, hey, who did what work this week? and we can go double check that work, whether or not things have been done in the manner that they were supposed to be done. So, because you never have that capability with paper or other current systems that I'm aware of where anybody that is allowed to look at the data can look at the data. So there's complete transparency from stem to stern. So people can't say, "Oh yeah, I did X, Y, and Z," and then but they really didn't. It shows up and is available in the field data book at any given time, which is fantastic.
And just to add to that, I'm going to end this poll, and you can see what everybody's thinking. That fragmented data. That's we were just talking about it. Having to transition from paper to electronic to get the data into a system. There's human error there too, right? So
correct.
Yep.
And that's what I was going to say. That's what the reports enable. There's no more transcription errors. We don't have to worry about transcribing data from one platform from paper to another report and stuff of that nature. So we actually are served well by doing that, so that there are no transcription errors anymore.
Yep. I'm looking at this real quick just to make sure that I'm answering all the questions and including everybody. Fantastic. So that was great. I appreciate you guys joining us on those polls to get an idea where you guys are, because the objective is to get it to a place where, number one, you're collecting the data easily, right, Jimmy?
Yeah, it is very easy. Even with all the PPE on and stuff, personal protective equipment, it's pretty straightforward and pretty easy. And it's been a process, right? So we started out with paper, and that's what people have been using for decades. And so with that having been said, when we built these notebooks in eStudy, what we really tried to do was mimic the paper as much as possible and make it look like the paper as much as possible. Now, that we couldn't do that in all situations, in all cases, but in a lot of cases we were able to do that. And so I think in 2023, at the end of the year, we had our first 5 to 10 people actually use the system for GLP generated data and data collection. And then in 2024, one of the things that we did as a transition was allow them to use paper and the electronic field data book. So in that case, there could have been some transcription errors from the paper to the electronic data collection, but from 2025 and then going into this year, this field season that we're currently well on our way into, we have only allowed them to use the computer unless there are situations and instances where they may have had paper as a backup. And we always, we don't require them to have paper as a backup, but it's good practice too, because you never know. So your computer could die, or you could throw it in the mud by accident or something like that. I mean, we are out in the weather, we are out in fields, things are not always perfect. And so we advise that they keep paper as a backup. And so,
you started in 2022 and rolled out in 2023.
Yes.
Now you're fully electronic for last year and this year?
That's correct. And every year, we actually send a survey out and ask people to let us know where we can make improvements to make this easier for people to use. And since you have a customizable software experience in building these forms to collect the data, we have made significant progress in that direction. We are a large organization. We currently run on about a $15 million a year budget to do all of this. And there's several other avenues and aspects of what we do at IR4 that are covered by that. But we had a wide variety of people and what their software experience is, from barely ever using software other than emails to people that probably could have coded this thing on their own and everything in between. So we thought it was very, very, very important to seek input from across the organization, and we continue to do that. And then one of the other things is we have folks within the organization that are very well versed at using these systems and have become experts of their own. And so we make folks available for questions and solutions. And then, as I've said before, it's a continuous improvement process. And, the odds are likely it's going to be a 3 to 5 year process until we get where we would probably not need so many changes. From year to year, the amount of changes that we look to implement are becoming less and less. And so it's an ongoing process, and will continue to be for the next couple of years, we believe.
And change is always easy, right, Jimmy?
It's fantastically easy. So
everybody knows it.
Yeah.
So some of the challenges.
So here's what we did. We had a build team to make a beta version of this software so that we could actually let people test it and see if they thought that it would work. We went over this before. There's 5 or 6 trials in 2023 and then full implementation. We had in-person training at 5 different sites throughout the country. And then so one of the things is we have a Google form, and we actually have it on our intranet site where we allow people to come in. They have to sign in because it is an intranet site and we keep things protected. But we have a form available for them to fill out to let us know what they would like to see to make this easier for them to use out in the field. And we continue with trainings. I've already had 2 or 3 trainings this year. We typically have trainings once every 2 months, specifically for the field people that are using this new software. I don't really want to call it new anymore because we've been using it for 3 years. But and then one of the things, if something comes up and is an issue, we try to get that resolved within 24 hours. And we have had very, very good customer service. There's a woman named Carla that's not on this call right now that I can point to at iAdvantage, and she will quickly resolve things very, very quickly and very, very professionally. She is fantastic and has helped us significantly through the years. And
less than 24 hours usually is what you see?
They at least begin working on a resolution usually within a couple hours, but definitely within 24 hours it is usually resolved, whether it's by me or another administrator within the IR4 organization or by somebody from iAdvantage.
So when you think of the challenges of rolling this out, what was one of the biggest ones that was a hurdle for you?
Getting people to understand that what they saw on their computer was identical to what they saw in paper. So there's a place within the forms that we built with the instructions on how to use this form and what data to enter into this form. And that was copied and pasted directly out of the PDFs and Word documents that we were using paper for previously. And then they would read those instructions now that it was in an eField data book and go, oh, wait, I can't do it that way. But you've been doing it that way for decades because that's what was written on the piece of paper. And now you're telling me that you can't just because it's in an electronic format. We found a lot of that to be true. And patience and persistence, I think, was probably one of the biggest things because it is brand new and change is scary and change is difficult. And, we tried our best to make it as easy as possible to move forward and stuff of that nature. But, there's a lot of people that expected that they would understand it immediately and that they would never make a mistake. And that's not the case with change. To get better at something, you have to practice and do it a lot. And so
your end goal was to get rid of the paper, right?
Yes, as much as possible. And so, we do all of our work with regards to residue studies under good laboratory practices. Code of Federal Regulations 160 and 169, we have to retain this paper. We moved approximately 3,000 banker boxes full of paper from storage facilities in New Jersey to North Carolina. And using paper, we were generating more and more and more. generally speaking, a field data book and raw data of ours was around 100 pages or more. And the timeline from data collection to actual the data review was at least a year. And now we have instantaneous access to all of this. And the amount of time that it takes to produce a report for a field study, let's say something in tomatoes that had 12 to 15 trials, went from days to hours to even minutes. I can pull these reports out in what would take days and hours at a time. I can now do within 10 minutes as a general rule of thumb. I mean, it's astounding the amount of time that we can save. So this was one of my favorite pictures of all time. And you can see on the right-hand side that we have our typical trial notebook, and then that was the paper data that was generated from using an eField data book on the left-hand side.
And this is real? This is real?
This is absolutely 100% real. Yes.
Love it.
Yeah. We have a whole room dedicated to holding on to paper because we still have studies that have paper that have to be dealt with at this point. But the amount of space that is currently needed is significantly less than it's ever been. You know, there are no more calculation errors. We can see the data instantaneously, and we know if a misapplication has been made. And like was mentioned before, we were shipping these books on the right-hand side, figure a pound or two per book, because you're generating 100 to 150 pages. It's not exactly light. And we were shipping those all over the country. It would start at a field researcher's site, then it was being shipped to a central location within the region, and then after that, and it was reviewed and stuff of that nature, it was shipped to headquarters and so forth and so on. And it was significant amounts of money that were being spent just on shipping alone. And that's assuming that you actually got the documents, and stuff has been lost along the way. There are times, one of the things that we really, really like and that really fits well with this whole kind of idea of the GSS and the GLP stuff is that, let's say you miskeyed something into your electronic field data book and you saved it and you're like, oh no, I made an error. Well, you can change that and fix the error that you made. But when doing so, it's going to require you to use your username and password and give a reason as to why this error was made and why it was changed. So that then becomes part of the audit trail, and that you can see very clearly and have a lot of transparency when you are audited in the future as to why something happened and what was done to ensure that it happened. And now we don't have transcription errors. We know exactly what was used and when and how, and it's taken significantly less time to write reports.
One question I have in that regard, Jimmy, you were talking about how the audit trail, you have to give a reason when you change the data from its original state. From the GLP world, that's required. When you're on paper, you normally just kind of have to make a note of it on the side, right? An initial and all that stuff. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah.
So how would you handle that if you wrote a final report? If you wrote a final report up from paper, would you transcribe that original data as well, or would that be something that the QA folks would then have to review on paper? Find.
So we would write it up, and then we go through several iterations of a final report. We write the initial and then see what findings and send it off to QA for them to review and others to review until we feel like that it's been looked at enough that there are no more findings or no more errors within the final report. And so a lot of that is now it's no longer transcription errors that we're finding. You may have some grammatical errors here and there and stuff of that nature, but the findings are significantly less. And so it makes things a lot easier because we're no longer inverting a 5 and a 3 when it should have been 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 instead of 1, 2, 5, 3, 4, or whatever the case may be. We're not finding those types of errors anymore. So, and that's been huge help because now instead of quality assurance, it's more like quality control. We're just double checking to ensure that things are the way that they were supposed to be in the first place. And there's a lot fewer errors with regards to a lot of that stuff. So it's wonderful.
I think so. I'm going back to some of the things that folks were asking about, and those quality controls and integrity are both a part of those. Ashley mentioned requirement for all grantees, even small organization, to have a QMP, and that's a quality management plan. Is that right, everybody? Am I thinking that right? QMP?
Sounds right.
If I'm wrong about that, let me know what in the chat about that. And then Johanna was mentioning, what is the administration's definition of gold standard with an example of what is the mechanism that decides these? And you've been kind of using GLP and GSS kind of interchangeably, wouldn't you say, Jimmy?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'm much more familiar with the GLP standards than I am with GSS standards, admittedly so, but they do not seem to be too terribly different. I mean, the data is the data, and that's essentially what the GLP wants you to do is this is the data. Nothing's, and at the end of the day, what we're looking for in both scenarios is that can somebody take the data that has been generated in 5 years from now and look at it and say, yep, I think I could go out into the field and do exactly what they did. And this is, maybe this happened and this is why they made these changes. And that basically an auditor is from the EPA will come through and say, hey, can I recreate this trial, this study in the exact same way and manner that was done 5, 7, 10 years ago and get the same results at the end of the day, so that when the when the chemicals are analyzed in the lab, am I going to get the same or very, very similar results? And when you're working within GLP, if you have done it correctly, then the answer to that is yes. And it's always going to be yes. And from my perspective and my view, and I think Daniel would probably agree with me on this, in that GSS looks very, very similar to GLP, in that that's all you're trying to do is be able to recreate the same study or the same experiment and get the same results, regardless if they're good results or bad results or in between results. That's immaterial. That we're not working towards results. We're working towards data generation and being honest, open, and transparent with which we gather that data. And so that's essentially what we're doing.
And I remember, Daniel, you guys broke down the GSS, all the pieces of the GSS to make sure that you were in alignment with that. And GLP pretty much covers it, right?
Yeah. They're not an exact one-to-one map, but there's a major overlap in the two, that's for sure, yeah. They both have it, the ones that we went through previously, they all have those in common for sure.
Awesome. Well, as we get ready to get you guys out of here, I just want to let you know we have some next steps. If you'd like to participate in a small-scale pilot, you mentioned building that team, the beta version, right? That's what you guys did with IR4. Same process here. Let us know if you're interested in that. There's a lot of folks that said that they had an immediate need for the data collection process. So let us know if you would like to accomplish that. We have ways to be able to do that. Obviously, right, Daniel? We have the ways to be able to do that. As I mentioned earlier, you're under no obligation to purchase from this vendor that happens to be here today, iAdvantage Software being the vendor. But if you'd like to, you can, because they are a GSA contract holder. If you need help connecting that with your contract shop, let us know. We'll be glad to be able to do that and make that happen, especially if contracting officers need a socioeconomic set aside to make things happen in Q4. We know that happens as well, right, Daniel?
Absolutely.
So, and you'll get a recap email coming out later today or tomorrow. It'll have the briefing presentation, link to the video, all the rest of the materials there, and next steps for being able to get a meeting with Daniel. I want to give a special shout out to Jimmy for being here. His contact information is here. It's also in the handouts as well. Thank you very much, Jimmy. Appreciate you.
You're very welcome. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Always love to see you. And we're going to do some final questions here. I'll make sure we hit everything that came in on the front end. Make sure we do that. And if you have to jump, let us know. You could do that. And if I have the session docs there, if you want to grab those now, you can. You just click that top link and grab those. And you can also copy and paste the rest of that information if you need to get in touch with Jimmy or Daniel as part of the process. And I'll get to the final questions here. Let me just make sure I grab those. 1 second. Pop it in the chat or the Q&A if you would. Let me make sure I have the Q&A up. And what we have here, so getting back to Virginia's, how to using this platform maintains and can improve data integrity. Any thoughts on that, guys?
Sure. I mean, you have to log in with a password and a username, and anytime you enter or save data, you have to re-enter your username and password. Anytime you change data, you have to re-enter your username and password along with a reason as to why you're changing that data. That maintains data integrity. There is an audit trail that captures every time that you do that you sign in or save something and put in your username and password. So there's no real way to, I mean, unless somebody's physically lying on the data, there's nothing you're going to do to change that. But, and what we've seen is that you always know who entered the data and when they entered that data. So it's a great tool to have that audit trail, and it keeps people from not putting in correct data as well. So,
yep. And Camille was asking the question, what documents to keep before removal from the database? I think that's probably akin to having those documents already stored. Is that what it is? And Camille, if you have anything specific about that, I know if you're still here, you can let us know.
One of the things that we do that may help answer her question is that, we are going to have a protocol that has to be followed for our experiments. And then if there's any changes to that protocol, we have to write amendments. And so one of the things is that we always send out with every single one of our books. There's 4 distinct items. We send the protocol, we send directions for the protocol, we send any amendments or changes to that protocol, and then there's a user guide that we typically include in this as well. And you can add attachments to the study as a study director anytime you would like to. And so that's one of the things that we do. And then one of the other things that the actual researcher can do is upload documents to the notebook that they're using so that they can justify. And like one of the instances where we do this is with our adjuvant labels or the COAs that are involved with the test substance. Those are all documents that are uploaded to our individual notebooks and stuff of that nature. Or if it's temperature logs or any number of other different types of information that might be associated with a trial.
So there's a couple different things. Standards for collecting. This is from Iantha. When you registered Iantha, standards for collecting and monitoring data governance. I'd love to have you get with Daniel to talk about how to implement the standards as well, right, Daniel? You can help with that.
Yeah, we would love to have that conversation. It's kind of the backbone of our platform. It all comes down to how you define and design your data variables. But yeah, that is definitely a controllable thing. And it's one of the first things you start with in the design in our platform.
And Rima's saying, so examples, I think for templates, I think that would be a good meeting as well for Rima to look at specific templates and how they're used.
That'd be great.
They're really flexible, right? That's the whole idea. Is you create each individual template based on whatever the study is, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
Let's see. And Kyle was talking about new technologies and statutory requirements. If there's anything that comes along that's new, that you can incorporate that into the data collection standards, whatever the standards are, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
All right. Let's see if we have any others. Make sure you get the downloads if you would. I don't see anything in the chat. I think we got through all those questions. I think we're in good shape. So I appreciate you guys joining us. Jimmy, Daniel, great job. And if anybody has any questions, you can raise your hand. And hang on one second. Megan saying, I think Camille might be referring to the statutes related to the government document and data retention practices. Probably true. Support for transfer of information of NARA and appropriate destruction timelines. If Megan, if you know what those are off the top, you could pop those in there.
One of the things that I can say, at least for IR4, we are required to keep all the data for any registration that becomes part of a label for the entirety of the life of that chemistry. So, and we've got papers from the 1960s that we have to maintain. And that is also true with this electronic data. And so one of the things that we do is, as an organization, when the final report is generated and it's signed off and the study is then closed and no longer being used, we will archive our data unto ourselves, in addition to what Daniel can speak more to this, what they do to archive the data as well.
Yeah. And to Megan, to your point, the FDA CDIS standards, I just looked it up here. I wasn't familiar with what that was, but it looks like it's a submission format standard that's required. So, those types of things can be designed from the report tool. So, if you're collecting the data and that's required for that format, and then you design your report templates to match those standards, all you got to do is run the report and it'll pull your data into that template, and it should be 99% of the way there. So hopefully that helps.
Awesome. And if anybody else has any last minute things that they'd like to ask, you can always kick an email to info@iadvantagesoftware.com, and you'll get a recap email either the end of today or early tomorrow that you guys can review and forward on to other folks. If you need continuing education credit for this, let me know. Pop that into the chat. I'll make sure that you guys get a copy of. All you got to do is get it signed by a supervisor, and then you get those. All right. Anything else you guys want to share before we jump out of here?
No, just go Hurricanes tonight.
Thank you very much. I appreciate y'all's time, and thank you for taking the time to listen to me.
Excellent, Jimmy. Appreciate you very much. All right, guys. Appreciate you. Thumbs up. Everybody says thank you very much. Have a great rest of the week. We will see you next time. Thank you very much,
everybody.
guys.